I'm going to start a series of sermons. It's titled, What is the Real Church? There was a group that was talking about church, not too long ago. And one of the young men said, our church has real church. Do you know what he meant by that? I think I do. And I'm glad he was proud of his church. Nothing wrong with that. But what did he mean by real church? I'm not so certain that I would mean the same thing as he meant when he said it. But that's what we're going to talk about for a while. He seemed to be implying that his church was different from other churches. But what makes it so much better than other churches? He had that implication there. What makes any church better? Is it because the music is dynamite? Well, I think that's nice, but no, I don't think so. Is it because the preacher's really good? Well, that's a plus, and it can help. I don't think that's what makes a church that much better than anybody else. There's a lot of good preachers in this country, and they aren't all Christians. There's a lot of good speakers. There's a lot of good Christians that aren't very good preachers. So having a good preacher who's a good speaker and knows his Bible and is a good person, hey, that's all a plus, yeah? Big. But I don't think that's what makes the difference. So I ask again, what makes one church better than another? What makes a church a real church? I'm not going to sit down and actually define it, because I'm not sure what the answer is. I think it's something that we need to each decide for ourselves as we get involved in our local church. What should our church be doing? And that's where I'm going to be coming from. This would be a good place to have a commercial, for you to think about that. What makes a church a real church? So anyway, you can think about it for a little while. But that's the real question. And again, think about it. Think about it after I finish with this video. But there's going to be more videos coming, so think about it in between. What makes a church a real church? Or maybe I should have asked the question, what makes a church not a real church? I think you'll get the point. I'm not delivering this series of sermons in a desire to hurt the church. Rather, I'm delivering this series of sermons in the hope that some few Christians might be motivated by them to open their eyes and their hearts to the world around them. Some of my supporters aren't going to like this series. I've been criticized in the past for being too anti-church. Let me set the record straight here. What I recognize as the church is the collective body of believers. And most Christians would agree with that concept. What I do not recognize as the church is any building, and most Christians will sort of understand that. What I do not recognize as the church is even the local church organization. And here's where many Christians begin to disagree with me. You know, the First Church of the Redeemed on the corner of Oak and Maple, that's not the church, not in my book. And most Christians aren't going to argue with me if you challenge them on that. They're going to go back to the first one. The church is the believers. But when I talk about what's the real church, everyone's thinking about their local church. If you say, I'm going to church, everyone knows you mean you're going to that building. So some people are going to find this a little bit offensive, a little threatening, challenging their little congregation. I agonized over even delivering this. I don't want you to get mad at me, but I want to speak the truth to you. That's what I do. And I don't hold back. I don't try and be a nice guy. I try and speak the truth. So you might get a little upset with me. That's a warning. When I say the church, I'm talking about believers in Christ. But even more, people, I'm talking about the true believers. And as we go through this, you'll start to see what I'm calling true believers. Just because you go to church on Sunday morning does not make you a true believer. Which means in my book, you're not part of the church. You might be part of the local church, but you aren't part of the church. And frankly, people, membership in the local church is not going to get you into heaven. Now, throughout this series, when I say church, I am probably speaking of organized religion. It's common usage. You know, it's a word that has a wide variety of meanings. When somebody says it's snowing out, it could be real light little crystals coming down really thin between. Could be great big heavy snowflakes that are just pouring down. They could be wet, they could be soft and dry. Snow can mean a lot of things. Well, church can too. So we're going to go through several topics. I'm actually going to start with one tonight. Tonight I want to start when it's night for me where I am as I deliver this. Don't know where it is and what time it is where you're at when you watch it. But I'm going to start with some excuses why people don't go to church. I'm not going to go into all kinds of excuses. I picked a couple because they're the most common and because I want to teach a little about what the real church should be using these examples. So what's the biggest reason people give for not going to church? We all know it. You're probably thinking about it right now. People say the church is full of hypocrites. Now my first question is, what do you mean by hypocrite? Where does that come from? And there are probably two major complaints in this area, and that's money and daily life. People call Christians hypocrites based on how Christians spend their money. It's true. And how the church spends their money. That's even more true. And people call Christians hypocrites based on how they live their daily life. And that's very true. So let me get the worst one of those out of the way right away, okay? Money. If you listen to preachers, they'll tell you it's not about the money. The problem is, people, it is about the money when it comes to the local church. It's all about the money. You know, it's all about the money even when it comes to those great big mega churches with their TV evangelist programs and everything. Don't be angry when I say that. You know it's true. And let's just look at it for a moment. If a church doesn't fire if a church does not get enough money, they're going to fire the pastor. It's about the money. It doesn't matter what excuse they give. It's about the money. They hired the pastor saying, we're going to pay you this much because that's how much money we got. And if the offerings start to drop, they're going to fire the pastor because they can't afford to pay him because it's about the money. Sometimes they say he isn't connecting with us, or he's becoming too extreme, or attendance has been dropping, which is about the money. No matter how you slice it, the offerings are down, pastor's got to go. I don't think most Christians object to giving to the church. They may not want to give as much as the pastor thinks they ought to be giving. Probably they aren't giving as much as I think they ought to be giving. But listen, you aren't answering to me. You answer to God. I answer to God. How much you give, that's between you and God. Listen, I don't think most Christians object to giving money. I don't think most non-Christians object to giving money to churches or similar organizations once in a while. But when they say the church is full of hypocrites, they're talking about Christians and especially pastors denying that it's all about the money. And there are Christians that think the average person is too stupid to realize that it's all about the money. Listen, people, everyone knows it. Christians, wake up. Everyone knows it's about the money. Let's talk about a little church of 100 people. The pastor isn't going to get paid a lot of money. We understand that. A big church means big money. A little church means little money. It's all about the money. Pastor of a big church gets paid a lot more money. Does that mean he's doing more? No. In fact, in most cases, it probably means he's doing less. At least from my perspective. Let's say he's doing less of what the small church pastor is doing. The big church pastor is probably doing a lot more supervising. Not necessarily a wrong thing. There's a lot of work to be done, and he's charged with making sure the church is teaching and helping others and whatnot. He's going to need a lot of help if he's in a big church. But it's all about the money. You know, wouldn't it be nice if the pastor of a small church got paid the same as the pastor of the big church? They're both doing God's work. And then there's the building. Little church means little building, which means less money than the big church with their big building and their massive mortgage and utility bills. Oh my goodness, people. For a mega church, those buildings are open 24 hours a day sometimes. They're all open 7 days a week. And there are a lot of lights, and the electric bill and heating and air conditioning. It's crazy. Between paying pastor's salary, and if it's a big church, you're going to have associate pastors and junior pastors and lay pastors and office workers and a lot of staff. Staff costs money. And that building costs money. And for most churches in America today, the pastor and other employees' salaries and the building are the vast majority of the expenses of running a church. And if the offerings go down, goodbye, pastor, because it's all about the money, people. You know, when churches want more people to come in, they may be thinking, well, it's good because that means we're doing evangelism. No, it isn't true. In most modern churches, new people coming in, the vast majority, are just coming from another church. You're selling them on your great pastor and your great building, and that's what you're selling. This isn't about God anymore, people. It's about the money to make your church the best church. We'll come back to that. Oh, and TV evangelists, they don't help that at all. You know, you get a half-hour church sermon from them. You got, 7 minutes of commercials from the TV station. Half of them are going to have the TV evangelist on there, and he spends another 7 minutes or more asking you to buy his latest book and his latest series of sermons and send in a donation, and I'll send you a handkerchief that has been dipped in the Jordan River, and if you send in some money, I'll give you some anointing oil that I got while I was in Israel. And he's got half the time is spent asking for money. Listen, running a TV show is expensive, people. It's all about the money. Have you ever noticed how these TV evangelists manage to find lots of opportunities to mention their world travels? Well, they don't tell you about it. No, they say, well, I was on my way to Russia from India, and God gave me a word to share about Jerusalem, which I visited last year on my way back from a trip to Sweden. And right before the trip I made down to Mexico, walking commercial. Ever notice how these TV evangelists and the big time preachers always seem to manage to slip into their sermon? Well, the other day I was flying on our new private jet that the church bought because they said my time was too valuable to waste on commercial airliners. And so I was flying on our private jet, and when I got to the destination, they'd actually rented a limousine for me so I'd have a driver so that I could pray while the driver was driving and prepare myself to deliver a tremendous sermon. Or they find a way to slip in that, the wife and I just built a new 72,000 square foot mansion for us to live in. Now, it's not for us. It's to show people how much God has blessed our church and how much the church has loved us. And the church is to be commended for building this magnificent, it's disgusting. But above all, they will find a reason to ask you for money. Now, in the early days after Christ, around 150 AD, there was a book written called the Didache. It was nicknamed the teaching of the disciples of the disciples. So in that book, it says that if there's a traveling evangelist, and remember, they didn't have a lot of structured churches like we do. A lot of home churches. And maybe the guy leading the home church wasn't as good a speaker, you know. Maybe he was fairly new Christian. So they had traveling evangelists. And they went around and spoke at churches wherever they went. And the Didache says that if one of these traveling evangelists asks for money, throw them away. Send them away. Don't let them in your house. It also said it's okay to give them help. It's okay to put them up for 2 or 3 days. Give them a free place to live and free food. And give them something to speed them on their way. But if they come in saying, well, if you let me preach, I'll do it for $1,000. Didache says get rid of them. You know, but the New Testament teaches us that a laborer is worthy of his hire. I'm not saying a pastor shouldn't get paid. But how come it always seems like all the local churches, especially those that have 200-300 people, they like to bring in big name famous Christians to speak. They always give them a very strong honorarium, usually. Shouldn't those famous Christians be doing it for free? I don't know. I'm just wondering. You know, some of these TV evangelists, and then I'll leave. This is one of my pet peeves, and I'll leave this topic. They say, send $1,000 and God will reward you with 10,000. Now, if they really believe that, why don't they send all of us $1,000 and God will reward them with 10,000 for each one of us? Hey, if they believe what they're saying, it ought to work. Now, mega churches don't help people's complaints about Christians and how they spend money. I'm not saying mega churches are wrong here. Well, if you push me to it, I'll tell you most of them are. They didn't start out that way, people. And not everyone in there is wrong. There are a lot of people mean to do a lot of good things. But wasn't it Jesus that said those who receive much will have to meet much higher expectations? If you're a pastor of a mega church, and you're a pastor of and there's another man that's a pastor of a church of 25 people, I gotta tell you, I expect a whole lot from that mega church. A whole lot more. I'm going to give you one example. I'm going to come back to this topic more than once in this series. But right now I'm going to give you one example and then I'm going to quit. There is a church that has a 75,000 gallon aquarium that has 2 giant arches in it. As people enter the sanctuary, they are walking through those arches. The church says it's a reminder that we are fishers of men. The church says that the wide variety of fish in there represents the wide variety of people that come, of all different races and all different economical, social backgrounds. And it's a reminder that we are all equal. Now, isn't that one of those nice lies? Do you really want me to believe that we're all equal? You mean you and me are equal to Bill Gates and Barack Obama? Then how come Obama has a whole bunch of Secret Service agents protecting him. Of course we're not equal. He's the President of the United States, at least when I'm recording this. Bill Gates. You and I aren't equal to Bill Gates. We don't even live in the same universe. Listen, people. Right now in football, the Denver Broncos just announced they're re-signing Peyton Manning. Listen, we're not all equal. None of us make that, most of us at least don't make that kind of money. And most of us can't run a football team the way he does. We are all different. Now all those fish are different too. But this church says it shows we're all equal. I don't buy it. If you're talking about fish, do you think that shark and that flounder think they're equal? I don't think so. The shark thinks the flounder's food, and the flounder thinks the shark is death. They're not equal. The flounder runs from the shark. But it sure sounds good, doesn't it? We're all equal. The church's website says that at 10:30 on Sunday morning, the people's favorite activity of Sunday morning is the 10:30 a.m. feeding of the fish, which is done with live divers, with air hoses going down into the tank. That's the quote, and I wrote it down, their most favorite part of the show. Label that aquarium all you want with all the labels you want, and you can draw some really good lessons from it. They have different fish represent different scripture verses. Listen, I'm still going to call it for what it is. It's a waste of $4 million. I said $4 million that it took to build and install. That does not include the upkeep, people. I'm wondering how much it costs to maintain. According to their website, their aquariums are monitored. They have other aquariums. That's just their big one. Their other aquariums are bigger than anything you have in a house, but they're little. 5,000 gallons or something? Yeah, 5,000 gallons total in other aquariums. According to their website, their aquariums are monitored 24 hours a day with licensed marine biologists. Now, many of their people that take care of the fish are volunteers. I understand that. But you got to know that they aren't all volunteers. Because it's hard to keep volunteers doing a job that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't believe me? You try working with volunteers. I do it all the time. I struggle to keep one of my ministries going for 1 week a year. I got one ministry, I struggle to get volunteers for 1 week out of the year. And I'm only running for 10 hours a day for that week. Their website says that church membership, see, these mega churches, a lot of times people attend, but they aren't members. This church has found a way to get past that. They get people to join the church. That way they got more names on their roll, I guess, because church membership includes the right to go view the aquariums for free. What do they have? Security guards guarding the place during the day when business is open? If you aren't here on official business and you aren't a member, you can't look at the aquarium. We're going to have to put masks on you. I don't know. By the way, church membership also includes free weddings there. Okay, I'm Pastor Velcro. We get that. Our church here is tiny. If you include everyone that watches my videos, I still ain't close to a mega church. If you multiply me by 10, now make it 100. Maybe I'm a mini mega church. That doesn't make sense, but okay. Listen, I'll do your wedding for free. I don't do my ministry to make money. Our household barely survives on what the others earn, and the donations pay for my ministry. But you have not heard me before say, oh, send me money, and I'm not saying it now. You want to send me money, fine, do it. Go to our church website and figure it out. I don't care if you give me money or not. Yes, I live off donations. That's how I do what I do. But I don't need your money. Your local church probably could use some more. There are other ministries that can use it. Listen, it ain't about the money. And if it's all about the money, it's because you got a high-paid pastor, I don't make a penny, or you got a big church. Our church is our house. And I don't have a 75,000-gallon aquarium in my house. Okay? You want a free wedding? Here's my fee scale. I do a wedding, I do counseling, I do funerals. For each session is $5,000 or a Pepsi Max or whatever you wanted. I don't care. I get a lot of Pepsi Max. So here's the question. What is a real church? I'll ask you, what's the church, the local church, what's their orientation? And that's the question that we're going to answer in the rest of these sermons. What's the church's orientation? And there I'm talking about the local church. I'm also talking about the universal collective body of true believers. What's our orientation?